Adam tweets this
Done.
hashtag. All right, let's dive in.
All right.
All right, so first of all, my name is Micah Rouse. I'm a former partner at Undercurrent and also one of the organizing members of responsive.org. And I'm here with Adam Pisoni. Adam, introduce yourself and tell everybody why you think you're here.
Yeah, I'm Adam Pisoni. I was the co-founder and CTO of Yammer, since left, but because of that experience at Yammer, I guess just become really passionate about the future of work and what's going on out there. So, and also help create the responsible organization movement back now 3 years ago, which is crazy.
Cool. So I want to talk about teams. That's going to be the focus of this hopefully ongoing video podcast series. So to begin with, I just want to hear from you. Why do you think teams are important?
Like, why are teams important? Yeah. No, it's a good question. Did you read Team of Teams?
No, not yet.
Really good.
That's a new McChrystal book?
Because it's funny, because he has a perspective on this, which even I didn't realize, because even though we talk about how we're still living in this very 20th century modality of how we assign work and all, teams are a common artifact, and we still, all the companies I've been at have had teams, even though they were still top down. But if you go back even further, there were no teams, because literally, when you go back to the beginning of Frederick Taylor, pre-Frederick Taylor, it was madness and bad. Post-Frederick Taylor, you had cue cards as an individual that told you exactly what to do step by step. Zero necessity for communicating with coworkers, or you did your steps and you handed them. Well, clearly, that only works when you really can predetermine everything you're going to do. So at some point, it seems, over the last 100 years, we began to run into situations where we didn't have a way to predetermine. So you're an ad agency, and you don't know exactly what the outcome is going to be. And I think it's sort of at those points where you see the rise of formal teams, the function of which was, we don't know what to do. And how do you figure out what to do? And you have a set of people who can figure it out using collective intelligence, a span of expertise and experience, and that was what we had teams. But ironically, again, we sort of have most of the time implemented teams still in a very top-down way, because I think what makes an effective team, when I think of like what is a really good team, it's a group of people where you have all of the knowledge and resources necessary to really accomplish something. But most often, of course, we see teams are, a set of people who may just have similar expertise, in which case they may not be able to accomplish anything on their own, because you need more than one expertise.
Yeah, so let's dive in on that. That leads into my next question. Think of a time when you were part of a really awesome, high-functioning team, and tell me about it. Like, what were the conditions that describe it for me?
Back when I was in Yammer, we talked a lot about how often the most magical moments were when there was some sort of crazy deadline that forced you to have everybody in the same room with nothing else to do, the thing that had to be done. And a really good example of that actually were when we did hackathons. And you would have an idea, and you have one day to finish it, and you'd have to find people who could do it, and you'd get together and focus on it, and accomplish an incredible amount in 24 hours.
So you had a really clear mission. You had complete autonomy over
total autonomy,
shipping whatever it is that you need to ship.
Right. You don't have to ask permission, and you had all of the expertise to accomplish it. Because if you only have a third of the expertise, you're not going to get it done, because you're going to be waiting for other people. So in every case, it was. Now I'll actually go one step further, which was shared mission. All the expertise required, clear mission. But honestly, another one is sort of shared values, in terms of like, we feel we want to do it for the same reasons, and whatever that is. I think that's the teams that I've been on that felt the best were really those. Because that, I think, fostered the creativity and collaboration and teamwork. We felt like we were coming at it from the same place.
Yeah. So, slightly tangential question.
Yeah.
You said something to me maybe a month or two ago that has really stuck with me. And it's very simple, but I think it's really, really true. You said people don't know how to organize to get things done.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
No, it sounds so crazy. And maybe that's an oversimplification.
Obviously, sure, but there's some truth to it.
I guess what I meant is like, people who work within large companies are largely frustrated because things don't get done. And I think it's very easy for them to blame the people. The individuals are doing the wrong things. But I think our point of view is that it is actually the way they're organized that makes it hard to get things done. So an example, going back to your team thing, is if you have a division of labor such that there's a group over here that knows one part, and a group over here that understands another part, and they don't have an interface to work together, you're not organized to get things done. You're just organized to divide labor up, and like from the top, you know. An example is, that one actually is a really common one. I have friends who, whether they work in large companies or startups, like it's not clear how you work with other people in the company to get things done. That's not defined. What's defined is that there's people that do this, and there's people that do this. They're not organized to get things done together, you know? And maybe that's like to complete the sentence. They're not organized to get things done together.
Right.
People organized to like work in their silo, but there are very few. And in fact, one of the points that I've been making to a lot of people is that when we think about the purview of company, like you're going to create an organization, and it's going to have certain structural rules. For example, you've determined that there's going to be these titles, and there's going to be these roles. You know, part of that is determining this is how we're going to work together, and it's just rarely done. Most of the time, it's just here are these titles, here are these roles, here's who owns what. But I think it's also fair game to determine the APIs to say, if you want to, we're going to work in projects, and each project is going to be less than 2 months. And you want to have a project that involves people from other parts of the company, they have to be on the project. And I think that's fair game to organize to get things done, to create the rules for how things get done.
Yeah.
Collectively.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are those? What does the system or management need to do in order to create the conditions for teams to be great and do great work?
Yeah. Well, obviously one big piece is to create the conditions where the teams have autonomy, have agency. And usually that means creating an organization with the right kind of information sharing and transparency, such that management, I'll put that in air quotes for now, trusts people, that people have the right information to make good decisions. But frankly, that has to work across the company. It may not be a hierarchical thing. For two groups to trust each other, they have to believe they're operating in proper context. So certainly having information awareness and transparency is one way in which, and again, you do that by saying things like, we don't communicate in email, we use open channels, we use collaborative tools like Google Docs or whatever, so people can see what's going on. We work out loud. That's one of those systemic rules you say that doesn't. But going back to what I was saying before, it's also about creating those APIs, saying that we're gonna, we understand this to some degree because there's a lot of talk about Agile and Scrum still. And Scrum is a set of rules of how work gets done that makes it so that, for example, and I'm not a fan of Scrum, so I'm just using it as an example. But for example, a person could go, in a company that uses Scrum, a person can go from one team to the other, and they know how work is going to get done. That's very powerful. In fact, I think to some degree having some commonality of tools and makes that easier as well. Like when I move from one startup in Silicon Valley to another, I know they're going to use GitHub. I know, and I can jump right in. Like I know, So I think that that it's weird because there's obviously a tension between agency autonomy and sort of shared, sort of common interest in tools, and so allowing for those tools to be emerging, and for the experimentation is important. But just having like structure. To finish this, I'd say, and I think a lot about the juxtaposition between large companies and startups. There's this belief in Silicon Valley that large companies are slow and bureaucratic and bad, and they have all this structure. Therefore, the alternative, which is better, is no structure. But I think that's a bad alternative as well, because at scale, that actually is just as bad. You end up with a lot of agency and a lot of autonomy, but very little learning, very little best practices, and a lot of repeating mistakes, and a lot of unnecessary duplication. And so I think the trick is structure is okay as long as the structure is there to create transparency and empower people through transparency and commonality of some processing APIs, if you will, than it is about control. Because a set of process that is just about control sort of doesn't do it. It's a really long ramble.
It's good. It's good stuff. Let's talk about the soft stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
So one question is like, how do you balance? You know, we talk so much about, or there's this ideal of flatness, and especially on the team level, it's kind of assumed that you want the team to feel very flat and no one is necessarily anyone's boss. But how do you balance that intention with realities of some people being more senior than others and some people having more expertise than others?
This is really hard because it goes further than that. You know, I think, again, thinking about either a large company or Silicon Valley, but let's pick on Silicon Valley for a moment. You're an entrepreneur, you start a company, and you really want to have everybody be really invested, be purpose-driven, and you want everyone to really share the authority to be able to make decisions and all that. And yet, the risk isn't shared and the reward isn't shared. Meaning, maybe you have 100 employees and there's like a very dramatic difference in reward and equity. So it does raise questions about, well, can you really distribute authority in that same way? Because what you find, of course, is that the decision-making context between leadership and other people might be different merely because the risk and reward is different, having nothing to do with environmental circumstances. And so I think this is one of the big things we're grappling with, because what we know, what I think we can say unequivocally, is that an organization where people truly have shared context, where people truly have shared mission and autonomy, it's much more resilient. It's going to be much more innovative. But what are the conditions that allow for that? Well, I think it's not just distributed authority, but it ends up having to be more distributed risk and reward as well. And that is something I think that we're sort of grappling with.
It's also interesting to think about, and I'm thinking a lot about holacracy and the rules that holacracy provides teams. The role that a clear and unifying mission or goal or purpose can give to a team. Say, even though we might have different levels of seniority, even though one of us might actually be the boss or the leader, we share this mission, and that's common for all of us. That's interesting that can play a role.
It's a huge role. I'm thinking about McChrystal because I'm reading this book, but he talks about the shift they made from having rules that dictated people's behavior, like in this situation do this, to moving to doctrine, which was about, in general, this is generally what we do, but it's up to you. And if you if you understand the context and have the doctrine, you're not going to get punished for doing the wrong thing. And in many ways, like mission is a form of doctrine. I mean, it's sort of like if you're starting a company and you have a mission, what you want is a world where everyone in the company makes the right decisions, even if it's not the decision you would make, that furthers that goal. And what's required is for them to have the same context as you and beliefs as you. And the more that gets spread out throughout the company, the more that happens. But there's no clear way to do that than having really strong, I would say, mission and values. Sort of like this is what we're trying to do, and this is how we believe. These are our beliefs that back how we're going to do it. Because when all else fails, if people really understand that, they're going to make good decisions. Now, contrast that with our mission is this is the thing we're doing, but we're really trying to make money.
Yeah,
it's confusing because, well, gosh, if we're just trying to make money, first of all, then I'm trying to make money, and so I might make different decisions about the collective success versus my success. And second of all, there are a lot of trade-offs we might make if our mission is to make money.
Yeah, and who gets the money?
Who gets the money, and that's
and how much of the money do they get?
And all that stuff. So I think people really undervalue the necessity of having very clear mission values-based strategy early on, and then recognizing that as a leader, and you start seeing people make decisions that I don't know if I would have done that. There's two reactions, obviously. One is to say, well, I need new rules, or I need to control those, and the others to recognize there's a lack of clarity. There's either a lack of capacity or clarity that's allowing the right things to happen.
What are the things that contribute to like interpersonal breakdowns, like where a team becomes dysfunctional? What causes teams to become dysfunctional on a kind of personal level?
Well, I think when people have different missions on a team, with different values and beliefs, I think when there's a lack of clarity around decision making and ownership or roles and authority is obviously one. I think when there's a lack of transparency, super common one. You have, for example, there's two divisions in a company, and they're going to try to do something together, and so they create like a faux team in the middle where they really have sort of different incentives, and incentives are a big one. Certainly, like literal performance management incentive structures can create team breakdowns. People talk a lot about sort of culture as it relates to having a culture of collaboration or a culture of forgiveness or compassion, whatever. But it's weird because and maybe I'm alone in this, kind of feel that culture is not an input, it's really an output of the process and the systems around you. So, for example, if you say we have a culture of collaboration, but at the same time you have a performance management system that rewards competition, you're going to end up with a culture of competition, regardless of what you say and
Right.
whatever. So, but so the understanding the side effects of those systems and how they're going to impact our culture is obviously a big one. And there's certainly simple lack of trust that comes from either lack of transparency or just pure capacity. If I don't trust people around me of the capabilities to do the thing that's being asked of them, that causes breakdowns. This was really big, but there's so much.
That's good. Well, yeah, I mean, I think those things about lack of transparency, people, a difference in motivations or missions, and a difference in motivations or missions combined with lack of transparency is the worst, where I'm being secretive about why I'm doing what I'm doing, you're being secretive about why you're doing what you're doing. Especially because 9 times out of 10, we both know what's actually going on, and we're just not saying it. And that's extremely dysfunctional.
I was at this, it was a workshop that the Society of Organizational Learning we paid them to put on. That's the Peter Senge.
Okay, yeah.
And one of the one thing, I took many things from it, one I really took from it is that the amount of conflict that's created by the fact that we believe we could hide our intentions, and we try to be, maybe for good reasons, try to be kind or try to like work our way around saying, but the reality is, whether conscious or subconscious, people know that you're not saying what you're thinking, and you're not. And so the only question she asked was like, when you're about to interact with someone, especially when it's potentially a difficult thing, ask yourself, what would I do if they could read my mind? Like, just assume they could read your mind, and then act as if. And it ends up being a really powerful tool and a powerful thing that pushes you to do the right thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's cool.
And it's funny because I've used this in obviously relationships too. I'm way less good at it there, but it's sort of like
that could get really interesting.
No, totally. Yeah. That's right. But it's true because I think that as humans we're just so attuned. We may not even know it consciously, but if someone is saying something that is somewhat disingenuous, there's a good chance you're going to react.
You sense it. Yeah. All right. Let's see if we have any. If anyone has asked any questions.
I think we co-opted Ask RO from something else. And I don't know what it is.
It's already an active thing.
Nope. There's
nothing. All right. That's fine. That's fine. All right. So let's wrap this up. This has been really good. One more question.
No comments on all this. I feel like you were absorbing.
Well, I have tons, but that's. I'll save that. No, this isn't for me to pontificate. I'll find other channels for that. So one quick thing to leave everybody with. What are some? You mentioned the McChrystal book. What are some references that have shaped your own thinking about teams that you would recommend to others?
I mean, I still think it's a classic of the 5th discipline. It just sort of makes you think about the system. And I love that book because it's not just about it's about the hard and soft too, the technical system. I've really enjoyed Team of Teams most recently, I feel like I have to be honest that I had some mixed feelings on reinventing organizations.
Yeah.
There was some really good stuff in there as well. Right now, I'm just loving Team of Teams because it's tying it all together. Really, from all the books I've read on this, it goes all the way. It goes to did the right research to find out how did this all start, how did we get here, talks about complexity versus complicated, talk about like all the things we're talking about right now. It's really done a good job without making it hokey. So, and I love the writings of Steve Gannon and Hegel and all those guys. But,
Great. Anything else you want to share?
the only thing is that the last thing I'll say is that given that we're in this weird transition from an old way of working to a new, where we're talking about distributing authority and the people who are most concerned about this are the people who are leaders who give up authority, and that's really hard. We're constantly running into this sort of mindset psychological problem that it's hard to do this, and it doesn't feel right to sort of give up authority or to let other people choose or to believe your job isn't to make the decision, but to build the capacity of others to make decisions. It doesn't feel right. And that sometimes that's okay. And that when you run into problems, it doesn't mean you failed and you should go back. It means you go forward. And the thing I was talking to this set of school leaders, and what I said was the new reality of the world is you're going to have problems in a company. And you're going to try to solve them. Your solutions are going to cause you problems. And you're going to solve those problems. And that's going to cause you problems. And there's no end. There's no end. And that can be okay as long as you reduce the pain and cost of trying things and to make that just the norm. And it's okay. It's not actually that scary. But I think that's just that idea is muted. We're not aiming for perfection anymore. And then it doesn't have to feel right. And as long as it can be, make it safe to try, reduce the cost of failure, we can improve, and that's all that really matters. So that's what I'll leave it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone who tuned in.